This is a Flipping Junkie podcast, episode 20. Welcome to the Flipping Junkie podcast. My name is Danny Johnson, former software developer turned house flipper, flipping hundreds of houses. Each week, we bring you interviews, strategies, stories, and motivation to help you get started flipping houses and on your way to becoming your own boss and achieving financial freedom. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's get to it. All right, today I've got a good friend of mine on for a second episode, Jason Bible from Houston. Jason got his first taste in real estate investing after joining a local real estate club. And in 2012, he made his first transaction, hasn't looked back. Jason founded Houston House Buyers in July of 2013, and in its first year produced $3 million of gross revenue through wholesaling, leasing, and flipping 70 houses. That's just crazy. So obviously he dug in and sort of knew what to do and focused on what important things to take action on to get his business going and get it going quickly. So I wanted to include him in this series where we're talking about getting started, mindset, and all that kind of good stuff. And today's topic, we're going to cover a bunch of realities that new investors rarely expect when getting started. So there's going to be some things that people just don't really know to expect when they're getting into this business. Some funny, some not so funny, some cost a lot of money, and some make you money. But we're going to cover some of these realities that maybe people, if you're new out there, haven't experienced. And if you're experienced, then maybe you can enjoy some of these that you can relate to because you've experienced it yourself. But we'll be looking forward to having Jason on the show, and make sure that you go to FlippingJunkie.com/20. That's FlippingJunkie.com/20 for the show notes, and find out more about Jason and what we have on this episode. And then be sure to also go to Facebook.com/FlippingJunkie if you want to add your own realities that you've come across that you didn't expect when you got started. I'd love to hear about those. And thanks again for listening to the Flipping Junkie podcast. I know there's a lot of other podcasts about real estate investing and flipping. So I appreciate you listening to ours. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and leaving a rating and review if you have a minute. I would really appreciate it. Thanks, and enjoy the show. All right, so hey, Jason, thanks for being on the show. We're going to discuss the realities that new investors rarely expect when getting started. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for the invite, man. It's going to be great.
Hey, great to have you on again. We had you on, I think you were just 5 or 6 episodes back, actually. It hadn't been that long. But I enjoyed it so much.
Double header.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it so much. It's good to have you back on. I thought you'd be great for this episode too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me right before we got on this recording that the topic fits really well because of something that you had just been working on. You want to talk about that real quick just to get started?
Yeah, so last night I was at an event with Quest IRA, and we work really closely with Quest. They're fantastic. And at this event, I'm chatting with, they had 5 or 6 speakers. I was one of them, got up there and gave my spiel. Hey, we buy a bunch of houses, and this is, what we do. We also pitched our radio show in this private money lender event. So I get off the stage, and like I normally do at these events, I go over to the bar because that's usually where all the seasoned investors are at, right? And everybody's telling war stories and crying in their beer. Yeah. But so I'm chatting with this guy, and he said, "Hey, I'm a new investor. I followed some of the stuff you've done on Facebook," and he said, I'm having some problems. I said, "Oh, well, what's that?" He said, "Well, I want to buy rental properties. What I want to do, a couple little flips, a couple little wholesale deals. I'm nervous when I'm talking in front of a seller." And he was just kind of going through this whole litany of stuff. And this morning, I kind of left early, and I was kind of pissed, to be honest with you. And I got home last night and took a shower, went to bed, woke up this morning, and I was still just hopping mad. I made this 30-minute tirade video on Facebook, and the kind of the encompassing theme of that tirade was of the value proposition. Like, every business has a value proposition. And one of the things I think a lot of in fact, I don't know a single educator that talks about this. They talk about the functional parts of real estate, right? Like how to raise money, how to do wholesale deals, how to flip, how to buy and hold, all that other stuff. Right. But they really don't talk about the value. And when you're building a business, where the rubber meets the road is what's the value you're actually bringing. So I'll give you a good example. I've heard wholesalers time and time again, or people who teach wholesaling will tell you time and time again, just get it under contract and renegotiate the deal. Like even if the numbers
That's
don't,
horrible.
and it's like, that is absurd. It doesn't even make sense. You are so bad at what you do, you can't even bring value to the transaction. So you're hoping you can screw the seller on the back end, the day before closing and say, oh, we really can't do it. It's got to be $20,000 less. And they're like, what? So I had this entire just rant about what's the value proposition look like. And this guy the guy I was chatting with last night had the same problem I had when I first started, where it was like, well, I'll just send out some postcards and I'll talk to people on the phone. Do you want to sell your house or you not? And that's not really how this business works. It's really that, I know we talk a lot about solving problems, but you really have to figure out what that problem is first. We sit down with the seller and say, hey, why are you selling this house? Why aren't you calling a real estate agent? Why are we even here talking about your property? And what really frustrated me was no one teaches the business of business. They assume everybody knows how to run a business or knows what a business does because they work in one. And nothing could be further from the truth. So we end up spending all this time teaching mindset and teaching, which I think mindset's really important, but teaching mindset and then teaching the technical nuts and bolts. But there's never a discussion on the value proposition, your strategy, and then the tactical implementation of those two things. And so that's one thing I think a lot of new investors miss. Like, you're starting a business. I've said this time and time again. I did a radio show a couple of weeks ago where when I got the invite, guy calls me up and says, hey, I want you to come and talk about that thing you always talk about. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, I want you to talk about that thing you talk about, sales and marketing. And I'm like, oh, one of the things I say is, look, it doesn't matter what business we're in. We could be selling used cars or Avon or whatever. At the end of the day, we're a sales and marketing organization. Marketing and sales and marketing. Right. Doesn't matter what it's in. So if you don't want to get into a business because you don't want to do sales and marketing, you think real estate's not that, I hate to tell you, that's exactly what it is.
Right.
We could literally do any business it doesn't matter because they're all the same. It's sales, marketing, and then, the contract in to the contract start, the buy to the sell, that whole process, the operational piece. But I think that's one thing that new investors are not in tune with. You have to build a value proposition. And
right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, because you've got to know what sort of your guiding principle, right? Like what you're focused on and what you provide to people so that you have a clear. It sort of reminds me of, I recently went to this meetup, for founders of tech startup stuff. But just, going around and introducing each other. And then it's just amazing how many people have no clear explanation of what they do or what their business is about. It's like, whoa, man, there should be a light bulb going, man, I need to figure this out, because you're doing stuff, but you have no real sort of clear where you got to be able to boil that down to like one sentence, right? Like exactly what your purpose is, what you do, and like how you're unique.
Yeah. Yeah. When folks ask us, hey, what do you guys do? I'm like, well, we buy houses that need a whole bunch of work from a family that needs to get rid of it. We fix it up and then we put great families in it. I mean, it's that simple. This isn't any more difficult than that. When we started our second company, Sell Us Your House, that got even simpler. It's like, look, we help people find missing heirs and fix breaks in the chain of title. That's it. It's really simple. If it's any more complicated than that, if you got to really explain it, people understand it. At the end of the day, do you really have a value proposition? Because the reality is that whatever you're building business-wise has to be a solution that the market wants.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I just absolutely ripped into were the guys that are selling real estate education on the premise that you can make $5,000 wholesaling a deal. And I just thought that was an absolute joke. I don't know what it is in San Antonio, but here in Houston, our median home price is $200,000. Well, an agent makes 3% of that, right? That's the median. So that's the middle market. So here you are as a wholesaler, it's doing all this marketing, advertising, meeting with sellers and all that, and you're making less than an agent.
Oh, right.
Like, what are you doing? Just become an agent, right? And the other reality of that is that you need to have bigger margins so you can grow your business. if you don't have good margin, you can't grow. Like you and I were talking about goals, how many you want to flip this year and all that. You can't do that if you're not making really great money because it just doesn't, you can't grow marketing, you can't bring people on board. All of those steps in growing your business, those are lagging indicators, right? Like you've got to build, build, and then boom, then the revenue starts to come up. But you've got to have enough margin where you can start to build those things. So yeah, it's amazing to me. The I'm gonna wholesale stuff for $5,000. It's like, no, you're not. You won't for long. That's the other reality.
Yeah, when you realize that like part of that's going to marketing and your time too as well. But
yeah, you're making like $1,000 a deal. Wow, that's great.
man, I thought about a couple of these. I don't know. I just want to maybe just say just a couple just to go get the ball rolling. I don't know if you've thought of some in advance or we're just gonna come up with them as we talk about it. But like one that sort of surprised me whenever I got into this business that just because I hadn't really done a lot of things in business before this, but there's a lot of people out there that will sign a contract, a written binding contract, and then not honor it. Now that's sellers, buyers, contractors, everybody that you come in contact with.
Yeah. So when I tell people that our close ratio is 100%, they're shocked. We don't put options on contracts. We don't put outs and contingencies. The only out that we have is free and clear title. So if there's a title issue that comes up that's so huge that we can't solve, typically the only person that can solve it, the only entity that can solve it is the county when they go in foreclose for taxes. At that point, then they're able to clear because they're a super lien, right? I mean, they fix everything when they take over that deal, with exception to the redemption period. So for us, if it's anything but that, we can fix it. But if it's something like that, it's like, shoot, you can't do anything about it. So outside of that, our closing ratio is 100%. And when I tell people that, they're blown away. I got into a little cage match with a wholesaler on Facebook, and he was talking about how, you really don't, just tie stuff up and see if you can sell it and all that. And I said, that's an unethical way to do business. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I mean, when you sit down with your private money lenders on your flips, do you say, hey, you know what? I might only pay you 50% of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my close ratio. So you're either going to sign the contract and do what you say you're going to do, or you're not. Now, I'll be honest with you. Those guys are great for our business because they go out there and completely screw it up, and then they call the guys that are legitimate, have a real business. They'll call us or Fortune Builders, or not Fortune. We buy ugly houses, home investments. So they'll call one of those guys and say, look, y'all came out. This is typically how it works. We got 7 or 8 offers. You guys didn't make us an offer. Most of these guys are clowns. Just come in here and buy the house. And it's like, oh, okay, well, now we can talk.
Yeah.
Because all those guys will promise the moon and never perform. So
and so many people will go into it thinking, well, he who hires or offers the most is going to get the deal. And that's not true at all.
Yeah, it just means you're the last sucker. That's really all that means. One of the things I said at one of these conferences was, hey, if your first like value prop is I always pay more than anybody else, if you're already coming out with price, like that's the forefront of your value proposition, you've already lost. Because if you get in this price, I mean, I don't want to be a Walmart, I don't want to buy. Now, great, they have great margins and all that other stuff. Well, they have tiny margins, but huge business. But for us, it just doesn't really work in the real estate business.
Yeah.
I always compare it to if you look at Dell or Apple. So Dell makes like everything, right? They make monitors and servers and all. I mean, they make all kinds of crap. And then Apple makes what? A dozen products, half a dozen products, a couple MacBooks, some phones. They got those goofy watches now and all that other stuff. So who is worth more? Or who's got bigger margins?
Yeah, Apple.
I mean, Apple's crushing it, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'd much rather be an Apple. I always likened it to, when Steve Jobs first came out with the iPhone, I think you had to pay $600-700 for the iPhone, right? And Steve would, and I'm sure his investor said, Steve, you should make a $300 iPhone or a $200 iPhone or a $500 iPhone. He's like, no, I really don't. I'm going to make this one. And I'm going to make this one better and better and better. And then, the previous generations we may discount, but I'm not building all these different, that's stupid. So that's kind of the way we look at it. We'd much rather be really good and focus at this one little thing,
Right.
buying some family houses,
Yeah,
and doing it this way.
right. Yeah, and so that's like have integrity and like keeping your word and being able to do what you say you're going to do. But then on the other side, to protect yourself as much as you can from people that maybe you're wholesaling to, that are going to do the buying of the actual house that you're going to be trusting to do that. And then with contractors and stuff like that, the bigger thing is to really, you sort of got to go with your gut a little bit and don't just consider what they're offering you, but just be careful about making sure, like with wholesaling, that you get non-refundable deposit, and then with contractors that you have a solid contract with penalties and things like that. They're going to protect you a little bit, but then also go with how you feel about that person that you're talking to, right? So you're gonna take some punches and make some mistakes, take some falls, but you'll find that. But if you start knowing that, I think it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think you actually hit on a point that I think a lot of newbies don't understand is this is a business and you are going to lose money. I mean, there's just going to be deals you do. Like we're going to eat one out in Katy right now. We knew the market was going to change in the third quarter, but by the time we put this thing under contract and finally closed on it, it was like we'd already committed to buy it. It was a pretty long close, like 2 or 3 months. So they were moving out. We saw the market change. We should have told them, a month before closing, hey, we're not going to buy it or renegotiate or whatever. And I was like, we're not doing that. So we're going to end up eating it. But, that's the difference between having integrity and not.
Right.
The market's not the seller's problem. That's our problem. So, we're going to end up eating a little bit of money on that one. There's a very big real estate investor lender here in town that says he's a private money lender, and he will not lend to anybody who hasn't lost money, because that really shows your integrity. So he actually said, if you haven't lost money in this business, A, you're not doing enough deals, or B, you're a liar. So he just doesn't deal with somebody who hasn't lost money yet. So this might be deal number 3 and a little over 200 now that we've lost money on, but less than about a 1% loss ratio, I think I'm okay with.
Yeah, but I doubt you're losing sleep over it.
No, well, it sucks, but yeah. You lose sleep over it for a day, and you go, when's the next one coming in?
Hey, but that's what taught you to be, to not make the same mistake on five more afterwards, though, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So do you have any other realities maybe that people don't really come to mind when they get started in this, just because it's not something that they read about, or, just something that you found that you were sort of surprised by as you got into this business?
I think the one last night the other thing I was chatting with this guy about is I said, look, and we started going down all these rabbit trails. And I'm like, look, hold on, let's back up. What do you really want? Let's start with what you really want. I just want to buy some rental properties. Okay, so why don't you do that? Well, everything right now is priced between, 85 and 95% for landlords. And I'm looking for deals. And I'm like, well, you're not going to find them. So I said, your problem is not in finding rental properties, because they still, these things still cash flow at 100%. So your issue is not with finding deals. Your issue is with your capital structure, because the lender is going to require you to come out of pocket for the difference between 75 and 100% ARV, right? So I said, what you really need to do is you need to just spend the time raising private money to give you the gap financing or the down payment or the difference between the 75% ARV and whatever you buy it for, or B, you just need to raise a bunch of money from joint venture partners and just partner on these things 50-50, or however you want to set it up. 50-50 is usually how I've seen it work in the landlord model. So, and he said, well, wait a second, what profit are we splitting? I'm like, what do you mean? He said, you mean the rent? I said, yeah, you just take all the expenses out, you put a little in there for O&M, some operation and maintenance costs that you'll have from time, and put a little reserve together. I said, you just split it 50-50, you do it for 3, 4, 5 years. You reevaluate after that time and decide, hey, we want to keep the money working or not. You sell it. You do a million things. But I said, you could spend more time doing that and get closer to your goal than you could wholesaling and flipping and making enough money so then you can buy rental properties.
Yeah, that's another one. And one of ones that I had written down here, because I thought about a couple of these, and one sort of the more funny realities is, let me find it here. there's actually places in town, there's probably in every decent sized city or whatever. There are places in town where druggies will actually attempt to jump into your moving vehicle. That's a reality. That didn't actually happen to me. It happened to another investor friend of mine here in town. But
I had two. We were trading stories the other night, and they were like hood stories. These guys were owner finance guys in the hood, and one was a multifamily guy way back in the day. He was doing hood stuff. Now he's a commercial guy. He's got some Class A and Class B, and then the other guy does owner finance. And so we're sitting there, and they're both telling stories. So one of them, guy goes over, chats with this woman at the house. Hey, what's going on? I own the house next door. Are you interested in selling? Whatever. And she said, no, I'm not the owner. This is where I stay. I always hear that. I think that's kind of funny. This is where I stay. So it's not your house. No, it's where I stay. Right. So I said, okay, cool. We'll have the owner give me a call here. So he's walking out to his car, and all of a sudden in the intersection, police car comes this way, another one behind. I mean, he's surrounded by cops. And he's just standing there, and he's like, what's going on, boys? So he found out somebody in the same neighborhood got assaulted. They thought it might be him, so he's putting his hands up, and he's like, hey, I'm a concealed carry guy, so I'm just gonna keep my hands up. Y'all tell me what to do now, So it's all those kind of just wild,
Yeah.
One of my favorites was there's this guy in town. He represents a hedge fund, and they buy 25, 30 houses at auction. So of course, typical hedge fund guy drives a real nice Porsche. So he just bought all this stuff at auction. He's driving over to the house, and of course, in a crappy neighborhood, gets out of the Porsche, doesn't have any protection on him, walks in the house, and he walks into the right, sees two guys sitting there, smoking a crack pipe. Nice. And then he looks over at these guys like, all right, boys, I'm not calling the cops. I'm not a cop, but when I come back this afternoon, y'all better be gone. And then he looks down the hallway, and here comes three more guys. And he's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Jumps back in the car and leaves.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
I think from now on, when they're doing stuff in those kind of neighborhoods, they have the police come by and do a courtesy kind of walk through with them. But
yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, some of these areas, you got to be real careful. So
even listed houses I've been in before where there's, we had, me and my brother-in-law were actually looking at one years ago. And I saw little pieces of things, like a little lighter or something in a room. It's a vacant listed house. It was a bank owned. And, so I was like, that's kind of strange, and I turned a little bit, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a guy hunched down, trying to hide in the closet. So I turn and just I don't know what this dude's all about. So I kind of signaled to my brother-in-law that was across the house. And I was like, hey, out front, Yeah,
so we went out.
Yeah, so we went out front, and and then we were kind of looking in the window, just to see if the dude would come out of there, and he did. And it was this tall, big old burly guy, but had a little puppy, with a little dress on it or something. It was just strange. It saw us looking at him and took off running out of the back or something. But
I'll never forget. First time I went into those neighborhoods was right off MLK here in Houston. And so I pull up, get out of the car, and this was when I was still, working for the man. So I think I actually even had a suit on that day. So I took the tie off, took my jacket off, and I get out of the car, and everyone's it's in the middle of the day, and as you imagine, in this neighborhood, everyone's at work, right? No, they're not. They're all sitting there hanging out in their yard. So I walk out, and I just put my hands up, and I said, hey guys, just here. I'm an insurance guy, just checking the house out. Because all the music stopped, and they just looked over and they go, oh, okay. And they went back. It was like a scene out of a party movie, right? Somebody screws something up at the party, and the record stops. And so I was like, hey boys, just here to check the house out. Not a cop. Here to look at the insurance. And they're like, oh, okay. They went back to doing whatever they're doing. So yeah, we still buy them in some of those neighborhoods, but we try to stay out of them. They're more trouble than they're worth.
Yeah. Well, I think one tip that I picked up on was sort of when you go to a house, like you said, insurance or something, if it's supposed to be vacant, still knock on the door and say realtor or insurance or something, before you come in, so that if somebody is in there that is scared or something might attack you, they have time to just go out the back or something before you go in. But anyway, it's just something to do to protect yourself a little bit. But I guess one of the other thing was, when a seller says that the house doesn't need any work, how often is that true?
Never. It's
Right.
it's absolutely. But what we figured out is uh, there's there's a couple of different questions you can ask to get at that answer. And one of the things we find is that men answer the question differently than women. So when we ask the question, we'll say, "Hey, does the house need any work?" And they'll say, "No, it doesn't need any work." And if it's a woman, what we'd ask is, "Hey, so let's say you're having the whole family over for Thanksgiving, and and you really wanted to make it special for everybody. What would you do differently to the house?" And then she'll say, "Oh, well, maybe it needs granite countertops." And, Susie, three doors down, said, she just put in new laminate floors, whatever. So then you kind of start to get the list.
Right.
And for men, a lot of times we'll say is, "Hey, look, if you had $5,000, what would you fix first?" And then you'll get more of the mechanical. Well, AC's old, needs roof, whatever. So you could sometimes infer, depending on who you're talking to in the household, what it really needs. But you've got to ask the question just in such a way. It's kind of like the question when you ask, "Hey, does the house have a mortgage?" And
Yeah.
sometimes people get kind of like thrown off by that. So a lot of times we'll ask, "Hey, you paid the house off, right?" I mean, put it in that kind of like, "Yeah, you're already talking. You already got some pretty good bonding rapport going. Just kind of, hey, you've already paid the house off, right?" And they go, "Oh no, I got a mortgage, $50,000 or whatever." So you've got to be able to ask these things in such a way that are sensitive to those, to giving away. Maybe a better way to put it is, you have to ask them in such a way to not make the seller feel bad when they answer.
Right.
Because
Right.
if you hadn't paid that, "Hey, what do you want to know about my mortgage?" Or, you know, if they are embarrassed about the house, we see a lot of that. Um, you don't want to bring it out. I mean, it's not the situation is what it is, right? I mean, it's we're not trying to make people feel bad. We're trying to get them out of a bad situation. So you want to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So don't feel like they're getting judged or anything. Which, for us, we really don't care. We look at these kind of houses all the time. It's no big deal. So in any case, that's what we find. So
Yeah. Yeah.
ask kind of questions that way.
Yeah. No, it's important to do that. Yeah, and it's not just head in there and have like that objective of I need this information so I can make you an offer and that's it. It's
Yeah.
like you got to care. You got to show some empathy, and if you can't, then you shouldn't be doing this kind of business. You should buy. Maybe you should just be buying from listed properties, bank owned properties, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's to be quite honest, that's why I brought a partner in because I'm not the guy that sits down and does this. I mean, I can do the stuff, sit down and bond reports, but it's like when I'm sitting down with, grandma and she wants to, you're sitting down with her 15 cats and she wants to talk about each one of the grandkids. I'm like, yeah, ma'am, this is all really important, and I know I should sit here and kind of listen to this, but man, I've got about 50,000 other things to do today, and so my business partner loves that. I mean, he
Yeah.
loves sitting down with sellers, and all of our sales guys love it too. They love the stories and just. Actually, I was looking. We're wholesaling two deals right now, and I'm going through the pictures of one of the houses, and most of our guys here are car guys, and I see one that's got pictures of all the houses, right, of this guy's house, and I think it was his mom's house, if I remember. And he just bought a new Shelby Cobra, so he's got, or maybe it's not new, maybe it's a 14, I think. Supercharged whole shoot match,
Hmm.
6, 7 horsepower, whatever it is. And then I'm flipping through another one that we're wholesaling, and this guy just got a Hellcat. So they're all there's all these pictures of the car, and there's some pictures of the house. I think there's more pictures of the car than there are the houses. So I'm like, guys, we need more pictures of the houses. But in any case, it's just that it's people dealing with people, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of fun. One of the things I said last night was I'm really starting to enjoy the people in this business, and I didn't think, I thought, I mean, people are kind of people, but this business, the people that are in this business are fascinating. I mean, they're just really different. So it's a lot of fun going to some of these networking events and hanging out with folks. And they all have different business models and personalities and all that. That's really what makes it a lot of fun. Um, so yeah, dealing with people. So if you're not really the sit down and meet belly to belly with a person, then bring on a partner to do that, and you just manage everything else. And it's not. I think the other thing some people think is they think that's the person who's the outgoing, boisterous one, and that's not always the case.
No.
I've got a buddy of mine, his business partner, really quiet guy, but he told me, he said the guy's just an absolute sales machine. He's very good one-on-one, real quiet, kind of reserved guy. And that's what you want to look for in a partner. You know, you want to have partners that are kind of opposites of each other. It's hard to be good at both, you know, marketing and sales and operations. Hard to be good at all those things.
Right. Did you think, you know, a reality, did you think that coming into this business that, I'm not sure that you would, but maybe you did, that you think you'd be able to make it sort of a 9 to 5 sort of, you can start work now and then stop it at this time kind of gig?
You know, even jobs I had with the man, my jobs are never 9 to 5. So I was not under any illusion, you know, that this would ever be a 9 to 5 gig. And you know, it was interesting. We had this conversation a couple nights ago. Somebody said, "Oh, you know, I just want to build a business that's passive income." And I'm like, "Okay, you said business and passive, and I do not know a single person that has a passive. I know none. But the only people that are passive that I know own, you know, commercial or, you know, multifamily or a bunch of single family. I mean, those guys are passive, and they have a management company involved. Those guys are truly passive. That's it. I don't know anybody else unless they've got, you know, I know some guys that have sold some businesses, and they've got, they'll have like a 5-year non-compete, and then they'll put them on some kind of, I don't want to call it a stipend. There's a technical term for it, where essentially they're paying you every month so they can pick up the phone and call you if there's a problem in the business. After they get, you know, like their huge check. But I don't know anybody that does this, you know, passive. I think the only way to do it is kind of rental properties. But back to your question on 9 to 5, there's no way.
Yeah. Especially in the beginning, it's going to be a lot more work to get it to the point where you can build up and you know, have it set up to where you can get more of that time that you need off.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting. I was talking to 2 folks this morning, and they said, "Hey, we'd love to just go up there and follow you around all day." And I said, "I don't think you understand. Like this room right here, this is like what I do most of the day. Like I sit in this room and I talk on the phone and I do emails and talk on the phone some more. And the most exciting part of my day is to get to go to lunch with a private money lender or another investor. I'm like, that's really, or to speak at an event that night." I said, most of my time is here doing stuff and signing documents. It's like, I got a closing right here that I've got to sign. So it's like, this is what I do these days. I mean, it's not, now 2 years ago, that's when you should have seen, because that's when we're on the phone, we're driving around town, doing all that stuff. But now it's, I mean, kind of running a business, you know, here. So if you've got a whole staff, you know, it's one of the things I learned early on when I was a kid. I was 18. I became a lifeguard, and then they put me in. I worked at Six Flags Fiesta Texas here in San Antonio, and became a lifeguard. And then I don't know if the title was supervisor or whatever it was, but I had a team of lifeguards. And whenever one of my bosses would come by, I'd start to kind of look like I was busy doing stuff. And then finally he grabbed me one day and he goes, "Hey Jason, I get it. You know, you want to do a good job. You're a go-getter kind of guy. But he said, if you're on the management team and I see you run around doing stuff, I start getting nervous, because that's why you've got all these people working for you. They should be doing the stuff. You should really be taking care of the management stuff." And that's when I realized, like, okay, so this starts to make sense. So like we hired between the 2 companies, like W-2 and 1099, we hired employee number 14 on Monday. So we've got folks that do sales stuff. They got folks that do transaction management stuff. We have people that do marketing stuff. And then we've got people that do like accounting, finance stuff. And I should only really be involved in those at a higher kind of management level. I shouldn't jump in and go, "Oh, you're not doing this right. Let me show you how to do it." You know, that's not really your job as a manager. So a lot of times it's not real exciting. You're just sitting in here in the office, you know.
Just quietly eating a bag of chips.
That's right.
And like
just working, yeah. Figuring out what we're gonna do next. You know, I mean, that's what it is.
Strategizing, thinking bigger picture. That's the key. A lot of people get caught up, like I did for so many years, and just, you know, working the business, and you know, you're sort of stagnating without realizing it. Mm-hmm. You're just busy trying to do everything and thinking that bringing on people's gonna, you know, ruin the sort of lifestyle part of it, but it actually helps with that. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what I did is I started screwing stuff up. See, I think that's the other thing new investors don't realize is when they really start to get going and they start doing a couple of deals and start building a little organization, you end up you end up getting in other people's way and screwing stuff up. I'll never forget. We have our sales meetings every Wednesday morning. So a whole sales team sitting around. We've got the sheet. We have these little sales sheets that we do. We make them, it's got all the properties on it, what's going on. And so I used to run these things. And at one point, I'm looking down at the sheet and I go, when did we buy that? Like they're like, well, we raised the money for it, closed on it and everything. I'm like, I don't remember this one. And then, well, you said we do X, Y, and Z. And finally I got to the point where I was like, screw it, I can't do this. You, the transaction coordinator, just pointed at her. I was like, you're running these meetings from now on. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask a couple questions, and I'm going to sit. So whoever runs the meeting sits at the head of the table. So you're going to sit at the head of the table, and I'm going to sit here, and all you're going to tell me is I'm going to ask a couple questions, and then you're going to tell me how much money I need to raise and which properties need money and when they're going to close. That's it. That's all. Because I couldn't even keep up with it at that point. So you start to get into your own way, and you start making some big mistakes, and you go, this is why you hire people that are better than you, which is really what you should be doing. That's one thing I find with new investors that's really interesting, where they get off on this like, well, I need to hire VAs, and that's another thing, interns. And I'm like, well, are you hiring these people because they bring value, or are you hiring these people because you're cheap? And if you're hiring these people because they bring value, and I'm not bashing VAs because we use them in certain circumstances, but a lot of times people are using them because they don't want to pay somebody who's really good. Well, I'll tell you what, if you pay somebody because they're really good, guess what? They're really good. They're better than you at doing it. They're going to find better ways to do it. They're going to find ways to save you money, might even find you ways to make money. So it's great to give that off to somebody else and then get the hell out of their way. Don't start micromanaging. Just let them do their thing, right? So I think that's one thing I see a lot of newbies make mistakes on. It's like, just bring people that are really good at doing this thing and just do it.
Yeah, no, that is huge. It's something to look at and always keep in mind as you're getting going and realizing that you're sort of dropping the ball in one aspect because you're trying to catch up in another part of the business. You crank up the marketing, get a bunch of deals, get busy with the rehabs, and you 2 months later realize, oh, I haven't done any marketing in 2 months.
Yeah, then you're really up a creek.
Right. So anything else that you want to share with, anything that maybe that you've come across as when you were getting started, maybe in the earlier parts when you were doing a lot of the work that you didn't expect that came up?
I think probably one of them, the big one, is focus. I think you can have this schizophrenic portfolio of assets. Like you'll talk to a guy, hey, how long have you been doing real estate? And, oh, I've been in real estate 20 years. And you're like, whoa, okay. So you always assume somebody who's been in that long has got like this massive portfolio, is like crazy rich. And then you say, hey, what do you do? And they're like, well, I do a little owner finance, I do some flips, do some wholesale deals, I do some, I sell and buy some, sell some non-performing notes. And you get this hodgepodge of crap. And you start looking at their portfolio, and the portfolio is garbage. I mean, it's like, you've been doing this 20 years and this is it? And you start to worry, because you're like, I could be this guy 20 years from now. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're making good money, right? But that's not where I would want to be in 20 years. And what causes that is the inability to focus on one thing. It's actually two things. One is a lack of focus, and the other one is a lack of patience. So you've probably had months, I know I have, where we're trying to find deals, and we might not buy a house that month. And that's not good, but that doesn't turn into, oh my God, now we need to get into non-performing notes, or now we need to do owner finance. It's like, you just need to be patient, because the marketing's coming, especially early on. We'd have 1 month where we bought nothing, and then the next month we bought 5, and then everyone's freaking out. Oh, there's all these houses, what do we do? So I think that's what ends up happening. They lose focus, and they're not patient enough to allow the marketing and the natural sales cycle to continue. You're going to have a bad month, because reality is our sales cycle in this business is really about 90 days. So you may make an offer today that you're not going to get until 90 days from now. So you just got to kind of wait and keep churning your leads and keep doing your follow-ups and all that other stuff. So I think that's one I see a ton of. And it's just like the guy I talked about earlier. He's like, well, I just want to buy rental properties. Okay, so why are you having to learn how to wholesale, which is one business?
Right.
Now you're learning how to flip, which is another business. Also, you can buy rentals, which is a third business. It's like, just find one thing, get really good at that. If you like doing that, figure out how to solve the problems in that model. Instead of going after all these other models to solve the problem in this one, just figure out how to fix this. Stay really focused at that one thing. So
Yeah,
I think that's one of the biggest killers to a lot of success.
That's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. I sort of cringe sometimes when I hear people that haven't done any deals yet talk about adding new tools to their toolbox.
Yeah.
And it's like all the tools are brand new though, man. And then you're sort of like there's some of these complex tools, and then you don't know which tool to use for what purpose, and so you're just gonna end up in a problem. Keep it simple. Most of the guys that do a lot of business are doing, wholesaling or fix and flipping, and then or rentals. They're sort of focused on one of those key things and not some fancy smancy looks good on paper, but when you add a human element or real life to it, it falls apart. It's not easy.
I'll tell you the one that really shocks me. There's two groups out there teaching this. Essentially, it's a purchasing sub 2, and then they're wholesaling it to a retail buyer. So they're really assigning the note, if you will, assigning a sub 2 note.
Yeah.
And they're just, you start looking at it and you look at all the paperwork and disclosures and all that. I'm like, guys, the reason you're doing this is because you're crappy at negotiating. Because there's plenty of deals out there that have enough equity that makes sense for an investor. You're just so terrible at marketing and sales that you're not good in that arena. Right. Now, don't get me wrong, is there money to be made there? Absolutely. But I've been to a couple of these seminars, these weekend seminars, where they try and teach that to a new investor. They're talking about, well, are you assuming the note? And they're like, well, we're doing this. No, you're not doing the assumption. You're buying it sub 2. What about the due on sale clause? Well, how do you protect the buyer and seller? And how do you stay in the deal? Or when you get out? And it's like, guys, this is like graduate school level real estate here. I mean, this is not, and you got a room of 500 people and they're so confused. Well, I think I could do this and this and that. And they don't even understand it. And so, yeah, like you said, some of these tools get really, really complex. And the reason they start to get really complex is to hide or mask the problem, which is the problem is you're terrible at marketing and sales. And you need to fix the marketing and sales in your single family business. And if somebody had that honest discussion with them, of course, maybe that doesn't sell education. Maybe that's really what the deal is, right? It's kind of like that secret that'll take you to the next level. But yeah, I see that a lot, and I don't understand when it starts hurting my head. I'm like, whoa, this is complicated for me. We do this for a living. I don't even understand it.
Well, I wonder how many people actually end up doing that kind of thing. So I mean, it's it's like you said, it's to feel like you learned it and you understand it or something, but hardly who really does fully understand it and want to. I would never want to do anything like that. It makes my head hurt too. So
yeah, and what's funny is you ask me like, hey, how many have you done this before? Oh yeah, we've done it a ton. You go, okay, well, how many deals? 5 in the last 2 years. I'm like, okay. Look, and the other thing I always ask too is it scalable, and have you scaled it? Because you can always do something one-off, right? Like we did this one thing and it worked. We did this and it worked, and it's like, okay, great. Have you done it 5 or 10 times in a quarter? Okay, great. Have you done it 5 or 10 times in a month? And that's when you start to look at it and go, oh, okay, this makes a lot more sense. I see that with marketing campaigns a lot, where somebody will say, hey, I've got this crazy high response rate. We don't even measure response rates anymore because we don't care about them. The only thing that matters is how many deals you get out of it. So you'll get, on both ends of the spectrum, you'll get a newbie that says, oh, I got like a 50% response rate. And then you look at, you call some of their leads. We've done this before. Someone will call us and say like, oh my gosh, I got all these leads. I need some help with it. And we're like, this is early on when we weren't like really busy. So I'd say, well, just come to the office and Tom and I will just bang through the phones with you, and we'll just see if we'll make some appointments for you. This is like friends of ours that were just starting out. And so we'd go through the phone, just call, hey, what's going on? Do the whole kind of dog and pony show. And you realize you don't have any leads here. You got nothing. Like even if you were an agent, there's not even listing options here. I mean, literally it's almost like the letter is almost like, I'll buy your house for anything you want, $1 million, great, I'll take it. And everybody calls, right? Conversely, we also have one campaign that we run that we get 2 phone calls a year from, and it's got a 50% close ratio. But you only get 2 phone calls a year. So when you look at the response, it's like less. I mean, it's like 0.01% or something.
Yeah.
One of those deals is a $50,000 deal. It's a big deal. So
which actually works out to be pretty nice with some of those, because you're spending a lot of time with these leads, that are calling in, these people that aren't motivated, So sometimes like you said, you don't want like a crazy high response rate if the response of the people responding aren't your customers.
Yeah.
They're not the people that you're targeting. So.
Well, I got probably one more that I just came up with that I think is a shock to a lot of newbies when they actually start working, which is funny because I can tell when new investors are actually working and ones that aren't, because the ones that aren't are still like really positive and pumped up and like, oh, Ross is great. And then the new investors are actually working are a little more demure. I don't want to say depressed, but it's because one of the things most people don't realize is that on a good day, 92% of the people we contact are going to tell us no. So our close ratio is anywhere between 8 and 12%, which is pretty high. National average is about 5 to 6%. So, and that's for professional like home buyer people. So 95% of the time you're going to hear no. And when people really start working in this business, that's when it starts to hit. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to buy a house. And I'm like, well, how many offers you make?
Right.
I made 10. Okay, well, call me when you make 300, because that's, you need to make enough. You got to get enough no's. No.
Right, and so to put that in an easier perspective for people is, so I think what you're saying is national average maybe is something like of qualified people is maybe 1 out of 20 offers will end up being a deal, and then you guys are doing closer to 1 out of 10, right? 1 out of 9 or 10, right?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, 1 out of 10, and that's not on MLS, or 1 out of 20, that's not on MLS.
Right.
And depending on what your market's like, it's a total. I think San Antonio is pretty close to Houston, and it's a total freak show on MLS. I mean, there's just not, unless you're doing like new construction or like huge additions, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, 1 out of 20, and that's somebody who's in the business already. That's not a new investor. You're going to pass over opportunities as you continue to grow your skills. So it may be 1 out of 40, 1 out of 50, maybe 1 out of 100. So I'll ask a lot of these new investors, when they hear those numbers, they get kind of depressed. I'm like, well, you said you wanted to do this business. You wanted the freedom and all that stuff. What are you willing to sacrifice? What about 1 in 1,000? You willing to write 1,000 offers? Yes or no? I mean, it's that simple, right? If it takes 1,000 to do one, that's one more than you did a month or two ago. So I think sometimes they underestimate how much it takes, particularly when you're starting out, how much it takes to get that first deal or two under your belt.
Yeah, so that's a good question to ask too. If it's like, I'm not getting any deals, and then the first question is, how many offers did you make over the last month?
Mm-hmm.
And if they did make a decent number of offers, then it's like, what are you making offers on? How are you calculating your offers? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it usually gets to the heart of a problem. Right?
Yeah, and a lot of times, 90% it is, how many offers you making? Oh, I made 10. I mean, it's like, we're not even going into like what you had talked about. Are you calculating stuff right? You doing your rehab estimate right? You got your ARV. I mean, that's easy to fix, right? But when you don't have the desire to make all those offers, it's like, I can't help you there, dude. You've got to make the offers.
And that's usually where the problem is. It doesn't need to go deeper than that one first question. How many offers did you make?
Yeah. Oh, it's, I mean, right there, boom. Problem solved. You need to make more offers.
Well, Jason, I really appreciate you being on the show. I think we shared a lot of great stuff for people to realize the more of the realities of what to expect in the business. It's an awesome business, and we have a lot of fun with it. And I'm sure people out there getting started will too, and hopefully be helped by some of these things that we're covering in this series of podcast episodes. Jason, you had mentioned starting a radio show. Do you want to mention that, or where can people contact you? Or
I sure can. Yeah, you guys can find me on Facebook. Best place to catch me on Facebook. I'm trying to limit the number of friends on there. I think I'm getting close to 5,000, but I'm taking people out that just add me that don't ever read any of my stuff. So that's a good place. I've got this series I'm running called 12 Weeks to Awesome, and really it's a 12-week series on how to be a wholesaler, lender, buy and hold guy, or a flipper. And actually, one of my homework assignments is actually to get all the documents written for that. But it's a 12-week plan. I'll be honest, it's a lot of the stuff we talked about here. It's making offers and doing marketing and all that. What do you need to do in 12 weeks to set you up for the following 12 weeks, right? Because that time period is 3 to 6. It takes 3 to 6 months to really get your first deal. So what do you need to be doing for those first 3 weeks so you can pick up that first deal in the next 12 weeks? So yeah, it's called 12 Weeks to Awesome. You certainly see me there. The radio show.
How do people find that Facebook group? Because I think I had trouble finding that. So just so we
Yeah,
avoid people emailing that they can't find it.
yeah, type in 12 Weeks to Awesome. It's all spelled out one word,
No spaces.
no spaces. Or just find Jason Bible. That's Jason Bible in Houston. I think there's only one. But the radio show's gonna be pretty sweet. So if you're here in Houston, it's 11:10 a.m. That's the business radio station from 9 to 10 in the morning. And we will do a podcast, where it gets uploaded to iTunes. And I think we'll even do some YouTube stuff. We're gonna bring the video camera in the studio for those folks that do the YouTubes. I got YouTube Red, man. I love it, where you can just go in and download stuff right to YouTube. I don't know if you've tried it yet. It's freaking awesome.
What is it called?
YouTube Red. It's like, I don't know, $10 a month or something like that. And what I'll do is I'll just tag the videos I like. And then I think there's a little bubble or something that says download to offline or something like that. And it just brings them all in. So you can listen to anything, while you're driving in the car. And the cool thing is you can turn the video off and it still plays in the background. So it almost runs like a podcast, like on iTunes. So I love it. That's how I listen to all my stuff. So we'll start doing some video stuff and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's we'll do an email blast when we got to figure out a name for the show. So once we do that, then we'll email blast it out. But yeah, it's a call-in show. So if you happen to hear it live, you can certainly give us a call and we'll answer all your real estate questions. So
I'm gonna call in and prank. I'm gonna call in and prank call you.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I had one of the other guys here in town yesterday told me, he's like, I'm going to call in and heckle. I said, bring it. You got to bring your A game. So.
I wonder if do they have that where it's you can listen to it over the internet?
Oh, yeah, they'll have that. Yeah, we'll get and I think they're supposed to set the website up next week. Monday next week, we're doing intros, outros, and some other, like we're doing all the commercials and all that other stuff. So they should have the page set up, I think, next week. But yeah, you can listen to it live. And then on that same page, they'll actually have a download. I think it's a downloadable link, and maybe you have to listen to it on the webpage. I can't remember. But yeah, it'll all be set up online. You guys can listen.
Awesome. Great, Jason. Well, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's a good time. So yeah, you guys go out there and buy some houses.
All right, take care. We'll talk to you. All right, another great episode. Jason shared a lot of great, interesting information and stuff that you should watch out for and just understand that's a part of this business naturally. And I think his point about focus is really important and should be focused on. But anyway, no focus. And then I had also talked to him about a couple books and, Think and Grow Rich. I'm not sure. I think he mentioned that last time, but that's, his number one favorite book, and it's an awesome book. So check out Think and Grow Rich if you've never read that book. And be sure to check out leadpropeller.com. Leadpropeller.com is our real estate investor websites that we offer and help make all of this possible with me being able to take time to do these podcasts, helping you guys get started in the business that we're still in. Also, flipping houses. We've got huge goals this year. We'll be talking more about a lot of the things that we're ramping up and doing in that business as well. But have a great week and listen in next week for our next great episode in this series of Mindset and Foundation, and going all the way through, and we'll get into more topics of the actual nuts and bolts of analyzing deals, finding leads, all that kind of stuff in the coming months. So make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, leave a rating and review. I'd really appreciate it, and have a great week.